Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in the middle of a conversation, a real one, face to face, and felt this strange, low-level anxiety, like part of your brain was somewhere else entirely? Like you were present, but also somehow buffering. You nodded, you laughed at the right moments, but underneath it all there was this quiet hum, a pull, almost like your nervous system had been trained to expect something faster, something more stimulating, something that wasn't just this. If you were born between 1997 and 2012, I want you to stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just interesting, it's going to explain things about yourself that you've probably never had the right words for. You are not lazy, you are not addicted, you are not broken. You are the product of the most dramatic psychological experiment in human history, and nobody asked your permission to be part of it. Here's what I mean. Every generation before yours grew up with a relatively stable attention environment. Your parents had Saturday morning cartoons. Their parents had radio shows. Stimulation existed, sure, but it had edges. It started, it stopped. There were gaps. Boredom was just part of life. And boredom, as it turns out, is where the brain does some of its most important work, building patience, developing imagination, learning to sit with discomfort. You didn't get that. You grew up in the first era in human history where boredom could be eliminated almost instantly. Waiting at the doctor's office? There's a screen for that. Awkward silence at dinner? There's a screen for that. Lying in bed at 2 a.m. with thoughts you don't want to face? Oh, there is definitely a screen for that. Researchers at the University of California found that the average attention shift, meaning how long we focus on one thing before switching, dropped from about 2.5 minutes in 2004 to just 47 seconds by 2020. 47 seconds! And the heaviest users of that era? They were you. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part most people get completely wrong about your generation. This isn't just about attention, it goes deeper, much deeper, because the same technology that rewired your focus also rewired how you see yourself. Think about it this way. Imagine you're standing in front of a mirror. Normal, right? Now imagine that mirror not only shows your reflection, it also shows you everyone else's reflection at the same time, filtered, curated, and performing their absolute best version of themselves. And then, imagine you've been standing in front of that mirror since you were 11 years old. That's essentially what social media did to your developing brain during the exact window when your identity was being built. Psychologists call this the social comparison loop. And for your generation, it didn't happen occasionally, it happened constantly, compulsively, and during adolescence, which is the single most identity-sensitive period of human development. A study published in JAMA Pediatrics found that adolescents who spent more than 3 hours a day on social media showed significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, and, this is the part that really matters, difficulty knowing what they actually wanted, separate from what others seemed to want. Not because they were weak, because their brains were still forming, and the mirror they were handed showed everyone else's highlight reel while they were still figuring out their own rough draft. And yet, and this is what I really want you to hear, something extraordinary happened because of this. You became fluent in a language that took every previous generation decades to even begin to speak. You understand nuance in ways that genuinely confuse older generations. You can hold contradictions. You can say, "I don't know," without it feeling like failure. You grew up watching the internet argue with itself in real time, and somewhere in that chaos, a lot of you developed a kind of psychological sophistication that is actually remarkable. You question things, not because you're cynical, though sometimes you are, and honestly, fair enough, but because you were never handed a single narrative and told to accept it. You grew up with 17 versions of every story trending simultaneously, and your brain learned to navigate that. That's not nothing. That's actually extraordinary. But there's a cost, isn't there? And I think you feel it. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that lives in your generation. Not physical tiredness, but something more like decision fatigue of the soul. Too many options, too many versions of yourself you could be, too many people watching or potentially watching, or you imagining they're watching even when they're not. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect, and research shows your generation experiences it at significantly higher rates. This persistent feeling that everyone is paying closer attention to your mistakes, your appearance, your choices than they actually are. Here's a metaphor I want you to sit with. Imagine your nervous system as a city. For most of human history, that city was built slowly, roads added one at a time, infrastructure growing at a manageable pace. Your city got built during a construction boom, highways going up overnight, new districts appearing before the zoning was done. It's impressive. It's also a little chaotic. And sometimes when you're standing in the middle of it, you can feel the noise of everything that was built so fast, and part of you just wants to find somewhere quiet. That desire for quiet, that is not weakness. That is wisdom your nervous system developed all on its own. So where does that leave you? Well, I think it leaves you at something genuinely interesting. Because your generation is the first to grow up fully inside this experiment, you're also the first to start truly examining it. The conversations happening right now about mental health, about authenticity, about the difference between performing a life and actually living one, those conversations are being led by you. Not perfectly, not without contradiction, but with a kind of honest urgency that previous generations simply didn't have the language for because they didn't have the wound. You were handed a world that moved faster than any human nervous system was designed to handle, and you navigated it. Some days better than others, some seasons better than others, but you're still here, still asking questions, still trying to understand yourself, which is exactly what you're doing right now. And maybe that's the thing that will finally make sense of you. Not a label, not a generation tag, but this. You are someone who grew up being asked to perform certainty in a world that offered almost none, and somewhere underneath all of that noise, you kept looking for something real. Keep looking, it's worth it. If something in this video felt uncomfortably accurate, drop it in the comments. I genuinely read them, and I'd love to know which part hit closest to home. And if you know someone born in this window who needs to hear this, share it with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is simply say, "I see you." Subscribe if you want more of this, because we're just getting started.